I would like to ask to keep your all questions to discussions because we're a little bit out of time. And also, since I was requested from Denis Bohush that he need to leave earlier, I will ask him right now to make presentation, and later on will be Svetlana Berzina and Svetlana Perminova, if you don't mind. Yes? So while we are starting for sharing presentation of Mr. Denis Bohush, I want to introduce him to our audience. He is the president of the Association of Political Consultants of Ukraine from 2021 till now, and president of Bohush Communication Agency from 2000. He is a strategic communication specialist, political and military expert, columnist, analyst. He is a specialist in the field of information wars, propaganda, and counter-propaganda. He is a doctor of naturopathologist, naturophysiologist, and specialist in longevity medicine. He had training in the political PR in Great Britain, in Conservative Training College, Westminster, organizer of the scientific training conferences on PR and communications technologies, among which are Image of Ukraine, Manipulation Strategies in Politics, Economy, and Business, and Methods of to Oppose. I would like to ask Mr. Denis Bohush to take the floor. You start to...
Thank you, Natalie. Maybe you try show presentation.
Yes, we are showing, yes.
Так. Так. Значит, our presentation names nuclear blackmail as a threat to the ecological security of the planet. Next slide. The planet today has a large number of environmental threats that can affect the development of human civilization. Now there is a war in Ukraine. The Russian Federation aggressively attacked Ukraine. Part of the territories of Ukraine are captured. Land, water, air, forest, fields are under constant attack. Rampant emissions into the atmosphere of rocket and artillery detonation products, dangerous combustion products. Our planet is the only living organism. What is happening in Ukraine, in the heart of Europe, directly affect the ecological safety of the whole of Europe. Next slide. The threat of using nuclear weapons, a method of intimidation of the world community by the leaders, experts, and journalists of the Russian Federation, unacceptable in the 21st century. In today's global world, all people are interconnected and live on the same planet. In order for human civilization to continue to exist and develop, it is necessary to prevent disasters and conflicts together, especially nuclear ones. The countries of the world and international organizations must unite and stop those countries that engage in nuclear blackmail. Next slide. Nuclear weapons used to be in possession of 5 countries: the USA, USSR, Great Britain, China, and France. Today, nuclear arms are no longer exclusive to these 5 nations. Despite the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and possibly Israel have them too. By the way, taking into account the current situation in Ukraine, Israel gets a solid reason not to join the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. For the next decades, it will be able to use Russia's attack on Ukraine as an example of how a decision about any guarantees actually means nothing. Since the violation on the state borders of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin and his army in 2014, the capture and the annexion of Crimea and parts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions, the masks have been off. Russia has shown that it is not going to fulfill the agreements on security guarantees for Ukraine and the UN rules on non-violation of state borders. With this fact of aggression, Russia also violated about 400 international treaties and agreements. The world responded with sanctions from the USA and European nations that tried to pacify an aggressor state, but this did not work. On the contrary, Russia began threatening nuclear attacks on the USA. Outright nuclear blackmail has become one of the central tools of Russian foreign policy. This is how Russia deployed nuclear blackmail as multi-level and total in the information space and international politics. On February 24, 2022, Russia treacherously invaded Ukraine, bombing of peaceful towns and villages. Convoys of Russian tanks traveled the road of Ukraine. On February 27, 2022, the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin ordered the Russia's deterrent forces, including strategic nuclear forces, be put on special combat duty. This means that nuclear warheads, mostly tactical ones, must be brought to the carriers, and if the team arrives, they must be installed on the carrier within 6 hours. Russian central TV channels began to make statements by journalist Dmitry Kiselyov on March 18, 2014, in the broadcast of Vesti Nedeli, who wanted to neutralize the USA into nuclear ashes. Also, the deputy of the State Duma of the Russian Federation, Volodymyr Zhirinovsky, and the director of Carnegie Moscow Center, Dmytro Trenin, threatened with nuclear weapons. Most messages on television include disinformation and distortion of facts. Also messages of especially frightening content. Russian politicians, journalists, and diplomats regularly use the topic of nuclear blackmail in their rhetoric. According to our research, information bursts on this topic occur every 3 months. That is a statement come out from a famous Russian person, and then various media pick up this topic and spread around the world. Accordingly, the governments of various countries and security organizations react to this information. In addition to intimidation with nuclear weapons, in the media space, Russia's shelling of Ukraine infrastructure facilities has already disrupted the operation of 4 nuclear power plants in Ukraine. Zaporizhia, South Ukrainian, Khmelnytsky, and Rivne. Nuclear waste repositories of the Chernobyl NPP were subject to Russian attacks. The Russian occupiers have already turned to Zaporizhia and PP in Energodar into a time bomb. Frequent disconnection of power supply to the station, lowering of the water levels in cooling tanks, and the shelling of NPP premises are all a direct path to the nuclear disaster that will affect the whole of Europe. If a loaded gun is pointed at you at some point, it will actually fire. This should be kept in mind. In this situation, the person who drove and pointed the gun is usually supposed to be shot to kill before they open fire. Such preventive action can save lives. Russia does this very often and always with impunity. This behavior of a terrorist country looks is into only trugish, but also catastrophically dangerous for the entire human civilization. The behavior of terrorists who act this peculiar way to achieve these sinister goals. Nuclear intimidation is a crime. Intimidation and blackmail involving nuclear weapons, planning and announcing as very possibility of nuclear attacks on peaceful cities is, in my opinion, the most serious war crime existing in the world today. This should be recognized by the international community. Russia is intensifying its nuclear blackmail, and the possibility of a preemptive nuclear strike cannot be ruled out. Recently, the UN and NATO have been very reluctant to respond to regular statements by Russian officials, experts, and journalists about the possibly use of nuclear arms. The national security strategies of the world leading powers do not work and are being leveled through such nuclear blackmail. The IAEA, a specialized organization in the nuclear field, the struggling to deal with Russia's gun antics against Ukraine nuclear reactors. Meanwhile, the threat of nuclear weapons actually being used in growing by months. On February 21, in a speech to the Federal Assembly, Vladimir Putin announced the cancellation of the agreement between Russia and the United States on the reduction and the elimination of strategic offensive weapons and instructed Rosatom to prepare for new nuclear tests. This is another escalation of the part of Russia. How should this nuclear blackmail by Russia be assessed? First, it must be taken seriously. A country that has nuclear weapons in its arsenal can actually use them. Second, such blackmail must be seen as internationally unacceptable, and it is necessary to do everything so that such a player who behaves inappropriately loses the very element of blackmail. When the agenda is to destroy our entire planet, such behavior poses a risk to the survival of our entire civilization. All countries should condemn such behavior and make sure that Russia loses its nuclear arms. There has already been a precedent. Ukraine handed over its nuclear weapons and elimination and the launchers. Third, Collective Security Organization NATO Act should include their strategies response to systemic intimidation and blackmail by Russia involving nuclear weapons. The systemic pressure on Russia on the part of the international community must be total, adequate, and immediate. Fourth, new formats of collective security organizations are required in which a nuclear threat will be most important factor. They need to be monitored. Does the manufacture, proliferation, and use of nuclear weapons will be under control? That for none of these apocalypse scenarios we see in the movies to ever come true. This is our responsibility before our children and our civilization. No, thank you for your attention.
Dear Denis, thank you for your presentation, and I think the nuclear disaster show us the biggest impact to our environment, and when we assess the consequences of nuclear war, I think it is the same, even worse. So, thank you.